Hello and welcome once again to our video series on youth sports, and uh, in particular, this one's going to be on how to be a good youth sports coach. So what goes into that? Because youth sports coaches, so many of them are just parents. So we'll talk about that, how to be a good one in this video. All right, so there's 5 areas that I really want to make sure we cover in this video that go into being a good coach. And one is learning to lead from the heart, right? And what that really means. 2 is when you begin to learn to ask better questions, it can have a profound impact on your young athletes. 3 is building emotional resilience. How do you go about doing that? And 4 is how do you bring joy back into this process? And what are some of those skills as a coach that you really need to have besides the ones we just talked about? What are some of the uh, communication skills and such that you need? All that and more is what we'll be covering in this video. So when I talk about leading from the heart, what we're really looking at is some fundamental characteristics that great leaders have, and that's what you are as you're going in. And it's easy for sometimes for some of us who were highly competitive as young people to miss the purpose as we think about learning to compete and win, right? Those ultimately are some of the things you want to teach, is how you go about teaching how to compete and striving to win, right? The message, though, is always going to be about the heart and about developing that young person and empowering them and showing them how to improve, showing them how to bring their best forward, how to manage their own emotions, all these kind of uh, mindset related issues that come from you as you look at that person as a young child who's got so much promise and possibility. And you sometimes, I've had some kids who are not easy to work with that way, is to see that in them. And I got to tell you a quick story of a child. This was in youth baseball, and he didn't want to be there. He had some emotional challenges. He was a special needs child, and I had to have a conversation with mom and this kid. But one of the things, like, all right, you're here and you're going to play baseball. You're not going to just sit down at second base and start picking flowers. That's not acceptable. That's not going to be allowed. And I remember one time, literally, all right, listen, I told you, if you do this, you're going to have to go off the side. That's not okay. When you're ready, you can come back in. But I had to pick him up and like bring him off. His mom, she let me. We had communicated. That's a lesson right there for that young child. So it doesn't mean you just let things like that go. It's about learning to lead with a heart, where he needs to learn a lesson that he just can't act that way in this context, right? So it's having that heart-centered approach for young people. So one of the things that you really can learn, this is going to help you enormously as a parent, let alone a coach, is to learn to ask questions that are process oriented. Like, you see your child frustrated, you see them upset, you see they're getting sad based on, they just made an error that cost the game. They missed a chance to score a goal. They're wearing it, right? Because they lost, right? We're still keeping score. These are good, valuable lessons that come from sports, even at young ages. You might want to step back for a minute and wait, right, till they kind of had a chance to go through their emotions. Then ask, so how did you do that? Huh? I almost guarantee you, once you start asking a how process-oriented question, their first response will be confusion. Like, they go inside because they don't know how they did that emotion. They don't know how they created those feelings inside themselves. So what you do with that question is you interrupt that pattern because they can't feel it when they have to go inside to think about it. And then you might say something like, well, I imagine you might be saying something to yourself, or maybe you're just picturing something, and I'm really curious, like what you are doing. And you're now trying to get them to understand that there is a process that they are going through to feel those emotions, to do, to strike out, to miss that thing. They actually went through a process to do that, right? That failure, quote unquote, involved a process, and you're helping them reclaim that process. It's powerful simply by asking questions. And this can be so disarming at the same time because you're not being critical, right? You're simply asking how they did that. You're helping them to learn accelerated way. So building emotional resilience comes from what we just talked about, right? Some of those questions that you're asking. And it's building them up. It's using that positive language. Every time they have a negative experience or hear a negative comment made, and they will, right? They're going to hear it. They're going to even say it to themselves sometimes. Oh, you suck. Oh, why'd you do that? Stupid, right? They're going to have those words. They need to hear 3 positives at least. Some research says 5 in order to counteract that negative. So it's real important as a coach to help do that. And again, ask those better questions. That interrupts that pattern. That will build emotional resilience. The more times you interrupt that negative pattern of self-deprecation and perseverating on what went wrong, the more often you interrupt that, the harder it is to replay that. And then you build them up by having them see what's positive coming down. That's how you begin to build that emotional resilience. Ultimately, when you're doing all these things we just talked about, joy comes back, right? Because kids, it's not that nobody likes to lose, right? That's kind of ingrained in us. And in fact, some of the people, I'll tell you, I know a couple personally who don't like competition, right? They don't like it at all, and they think sports, all it is about losing and winning. And the kids who win, that terrible feeling of losing, avoid it, avoid it, avoid it. Well, these people I have known, and I know this: they don't like losing so much that to avoid that feeling of losing, they don't want to compete at all. Right? That's how competitive they are. That's how much they don't like that concept or idea of losing. They think it should just be gone because they don't like the feeling of it. So rather than learning from that, they would just soon take it off the table. Well, you that's not really doing a service. And the joy that can come is through the experiencing of all these emotions, the learning from it, the growing from it, and then seeing it all come together. Again, probably taking too much time with this, but I got to tell the story. I've said it before, of watching a 6-year-old boy as I'm coaching baseball at 16 years old, running this little PAL league. This boy who had a club hand and a serious limp, he had physical handicap, and he's out there trying to play baseball, and it's just like I can't even hit the bat with a ball. But when he finally did make contact, and because of a bad throw, he got to first base, the joy, that joy was incredible. And his teammates rushed him like he just got the game-winning hit, right? That was such an incredible experience. But he never really lost the joy, right? He was just waiting for that moment for it to come out. And then that moment, I can tell you, I pray it lasted his lifetime, because it was, from my standpoint, a powerful thing to see all those kids supporting him as well. That's what youth sports can do. So, in this modern world that we're facing, being a great coach is takes those things we already talked about, but also you really need to be clear with parents, positive with the kids. Parents are going to back you when they see that you are really got the kids heart centered, when you're being fair about playing time, and that you are regularly teaching. But you also going to need to be a good communicator with them and let them know what your philosophy is. Make sure they understand like those boundary lines. Like, for example, what I did with that mom with that boy is like, sitting down in the middle of the field doesn't set a good example for anybody, and I'm not going to let that go on. So I really want you backing with this, because otherwise, like, I'm going to go to the league president and all, something we can't have. So back me with that. And that communication's all we needed. She also knew that I had all these years of working in special education. So like I knew what I was talking about. It wasn't just a father out there. So that did help too. But that's something that is a skill you need to develop, and some, there's some patience there. It's really trying to understand the parents, but being clear and like, the, this is it. I am the coach, and these are the rules I'm having. So being right up front with that is huge. And that brings us to the end of yet another video. And I thank you for tuning into this and listening to the end. I encourage you to subscribe to our channel and check out some of the other videos, in particular, how important is sports and leisure to youth development. So check that video out today.